The first thing they take from you isn't your phone. It's your certainty about reality. You thought this was just a job. A good one. Stable. Respected. Safe. You told people you were going into cybersecurity. Protecting systems, stopping hackers, defending networks. That's what you believe. That's what they wanted you to believe. Have you ever noticed how the most important jobs in the world are always described in the simplest words? Because the truth is harder to explain and much harder to forget. Your badge doesn't open the first door. It opens the second. The first door opens when someone watches you and decides you're ready to see what's behind it. Inside, there are no windows, no clocks, no signal, just screens, rows of them, all alive, all watching something. At rank 1, you're not protecting secrets. You're learning how many exist. They don't start you with threats. They start you with patterns. Normal traffic, normal users, normal behavior. Because before you can detect danger, you have to understand what normal looks like. And at first, that sounds simple, predictable, safe. But the longer you sit there, the more something starts to feel off. Like normal isn't a fixed thing. It shifts, bends, almost adapts depending on who's watching it. And you begin to notice tiny inconsistencies, fragments of data that don't match the rhythm, signals that appear for a second too long or disappear a second too early, and your training tells you to ignore them, to trust the filters, to rely on the system because the system is smarter than you, faster than you, more complete than anything you could understand. But there's a problem with that logic, one that slowly crawls into your mind the longer you sit in that silent room. The system is filtering everything. Then who is filtering the system? That question isn't in your training manual. It's not in your briefings. And it's definitely not something you're supposed to say out loud. But once it appears, it doesn't go away. It lingers in the background of every pattern you observe, every stream of data you monitor, every normal behavior you're told to accept without question. And then it happens, you see something, not big, not dramatic, not the kind of threat you imagined when you took this job. Just a subtle deviation, a request that routes differently, a signal that echoes in a way that doesn't make sense. And for a moment you freeze, because this is the exact kind of thing you were told to ignore, the exact kind of noise that wastes time. But something about it feels intentional, like it's not trying to hide. It's trying to be overlooked, like it's testing whether anyone is paying attention beyond what they've been told to see. And before you can overthink it, before the training overrides your instinct, you flag it. Just a small action, barely noticeable in a system this large, something that should disappear into the noise like everything else. And for a second, it does. Nothing changes. The screens keep moving. The room stays silent. Your heartbeat slows, and you almost convince yourself it didn't matter, that you imagined it, that you're still just a beginner trying to find meaning where there isn't any. Until your screen goes completely black. No warning, no error, just gone. And the silence in the room deepens in a way you didn't think was possible. Like the system itself just paused to acknowledge what you did. And then you hear it, a voice, closer now, sharper than before, cutting through the silence with a precision that feels deliberate. Step away from the terminal, and in that exact moment, something shifts inside you, something irreversible, because you finally understand the one thing nobody tells you before you enter this world. This isn't a place where you watch for threats. This is a place where something else watches to see if you notice them. Go for first 20, add bullet points at a tart. Rank 2. They don't explain what you found. They don't call you into a room. They don't give you answers. They don't even acknowledge that anything unusual happened. They just change your access, quietly, almost invisibly, like the system itself shifted around you overnight. And the next morning when you sit down, your screen isn't the same anymore. It's cleaner, sharper, focused in a way that feels intentional, like someone has already decided what you don't need to see. And for a moment you think this is a reward, a sign you're moving forward, that you did something right. But the longer you stare at it, the more you realize this isn't about seeing more. It's about seeing less, just more precisely. At rank 2, you're no longer watching everything. You're watching what matters, or at least what someone decided matters. And that difference is where the weight begins to settle in your chest. Have you ever noticed how responsibility doesn't feel heavy at first? It feels small, almost insignificant. Just one more step, one more task, one more decision that doesn't seem like it could change anything. But then those small decisions start stacking, and suddenly you realize they weren't small at all. That's what this rank is. Decisions. Not big dramatic ones, not life or death in the way you imagined, but constant, quiet choices that shape what continues and what disappears, what moves forward and what gets erased before anyone ever notices it existed. The system starts routing things to you now. Not everything, never everything, but specific signals, flagged not by automation, but by something deeper in the architecture, something that doesn't explain itself. A connection appears on your screen. It doesn't look dangerous. No malicious code, no aggressive pattern, no sign of intrusion. Just movement. Clean, structured, almost careful. You review it like you were trained to do, checking layers, tracing behavior, comparing patterns, and everything about it says the same thing. This isn't a threat. And yet, it's sitting in front of you with one simple instruction: action required. That's when the discomfort begins. Because your training tells you not to question intent, not to overthink, not to hesitate. But your instinct is louder now, and it's asking a question the training never answered. If this isn't harmful, then why is it here? Why you? Why now? You pause, just for a second longer than you should, and in that pause something shifts. A message appears, not part of the system interface, not automated, something typed, direct. Proceed. There's no name attached, no identity, just certainty. And it hits you in that moment that you're not just interacting with the system anymore. You're being observed inside it. So you make the decision. You execute the command. The signal disappears instantly, clean and complete, like it was never there, like it never mattered, and the system stabilizes again, returning to that controlled, predictable rhythm you're starting to recognize as artificial. But something inside you doesn't return to normal, because now you've crossed a line you didn't see before. You've acted without understanding. You've removed something that didn't feel like a threat. And the worst part isn't that you did it, it's how easy it was. Rank 3. By the time you reach rank 3, nobody tells you that you've been promoted, because this place doesn't work like that. There are no titles, no ceremonies, no clear transitions, just a quiet expansion of access that appears one day without explanation, like a door that was always there but only now decides to open. And when you step through it, the first thing you notice isn't what's added, it's what's missing. There are fewer filters now, fewer layers between you and the raw system, and for the first time since you arrived, you're not looking at a controlled version of reality, you're looking at something closer to the truth. And it's not as clean as they made it seem. The patterns are different here, deeper, more complex, almost alive in the way they adapt and shift without triggering anything obvious. And the longer you watch them, the more a single thought starts to take shape in your mind. These aren't intrusions. Have you ever followed something carefully, step by step, expecting it to lead you outside the system, only to realize it never leaves? That's what happens the first time you trace one of these signals. You isolate it, just like you were trained, running it through every layer, every checkpoint, every verification path, expecting to find an origin point somewhere beyond your network, some external source you can label as a threat. But instead, it loops, cleanly, perfectly, back into the system itself. At first, you think it's an error, a misread, something you're missing because you're still adjusting to this level of access. So you run it again, slower this time, deeper, more precise, and the result doesn't change. It never leaves. It was never outside to begin with. That realization doesn't hit you all at once. It builds, piece by piece, as you start connecting it to everything you've seen before. Every anomaly you flagged, every signal you were told to remove, every decision you made without fully understanding the context. And suddenly those moments don't feel random anymore. They feel aligned, like parts of a system you weren't allowed to see yet. You're not just identifying threats, you're shaping an environment, maintaining a structure, protecting something that isn't being explained to you. And for the first time, the question changes. It's no longer, what am I stopping? It's, what am I preserving? You try to report it, because some part of you still believes that's what you're supposed to do, that there's a higher level of oversight, someone who will step in and clarify what this means. But before you even finish typing, a notification appears, cutting you off mid-thought. Do not engage further. Not a warning, not a suggestion, a command, final and deliberate, like it was waiting for you to reach this exact point. And that's when the last piece falls into place. If they didn't want you to see this, you wouldn't have access. If they didn't want you to understand it, they would have filtered it out. Which means the only reason you're here is because they wanted to know what you would do when you found it. And that's the moment everything changes, because you finally understand the truth that was hidden behind every layer of training, every controlled system, every quiet decision you've made so far. Not everything inside this network is a threat. Some things are meant to stay exactly where they are. And whatever those things are, you've just proven that you're capable of protecting them. Rank 4. The truth you can't unsee. You don't get promoted to rank 4. You get selected. There's no ceremony, no congratulatory email, no badge upgrade. One day, a door opens for you that shouldn't, a door that was invisible yesterday, and when you step inside, the room feels different immediately, quieter, emptier, more controlled. Fewer screens, fewer colleagues, more silence. The hum of the servers seems louder in this space, almost deliberate, as if it's waiting for you to understand something. At this level, you realize that what you've been doing for years, blocking signals, neutralizing threats, redirecting anomalies, was only a fraction of the picture. This isn't about defense anymore. This is about decisions. Strategic, irreversible decisions that ripple through the system without anyone outside ever noticing. Inside this room, you see the system for what it really is. The infrastructure, the networks, the alerts, they are no longer just mechanisms to track intrusions. They are tools to shape perception, to influence outcomes, to manage reality itself. Every piece of information that flows through these channels can be amplified, silenced, or redirected. You've been protecting something far more valuable than data. You've been guarding influence. And that's when it hits you. Cyber operations at this level aren't about stopping hackers. They're about control. Who sees what? Who hears what? Who even thinks what? And suddenly, every choice you've made up to this point takes on a new weight. You start to notice patterns you never could before. The anomalies that seemed insignificant at rank 1 are now threads in a much larger web. Signals once flagged as suspicious are actually carefully maintained flows, each decision upstream calibrated for a reason you don't fully understand yet. Every removed server, every blocked connection, every redirected path you executed before, those weren't just defensive measures. They were maintaining balance. They were preserving order, but not the kind of order you imagined when you joined. This is a version of reality, curated, filtered, and maintained silently, with consequences that extend far beyond your terminal. At rank 4, the stakes are personal as well as operational. Your decisions now affect not only systems, but perceptions, narratives, and the boundaries of knowledge. You realize that the same tools you use to protect networks can shape societies. One message routed incorrectly, one alert ignored, one piece of information left unchecked, and the ripple could change how people understand the world. The scale of what you're holding doesn't scare you yet, it humbles you. And that's when the line between right and wrong becomes almost meaningless, because the system is not binary. It is shades of influence, judgment, and timing. The most uncomfortable truth comes slowly, almost imperceptibly. You are no longer a participant in cybersecurity. You are a custodian of reality. Every choice, every action, every block or allowed signal is a decision about what will exist and what will vanish. And when you leave this room, even for a moment, you carry it all with you. You begin to see the invisible structures outside your agency, the information people take for granted, the narratives they trust, the realities they assume are untouched. Everything seems curated now. Every headline, every trend, every signal in the world has a pattern you understand, and that understanding isolates you. The world moves on as if nothing changed, but you cannot unsee the architecture behind it. You are now part of the system that quietly decides what the world sees, and once you've crossed that threshold, there's no returning to innocence. At this level, knowledge is both power and burden. You can no longer ignore subtle discrepancies. You can no longer pretend patterns are coincidences. And most dangerously, you realize that your role isn't just to protect secrets, it's to protect the system's version of reality itself. Every choice matters, and there's no undo button. You are the silent guardian of the truths most will never question, and the weight of that realization lingers long after you log off. Go fought first 20 prompts. Final rank. The cost of knowing everything. At the final rank, there are no more doors. There are no more rooms. No layers of access. No gradual progression. No incremental permissions. There is only access. Total, unrestricted, irreversible. You can see everything now, not just systems, not just networks, not just alerts and anomalies, but the connections behind them, the flows of information, the movements of influence, the hidden levers that shape what people see, what they believe, and what they never even question. Every signal, every message, every hidden channel is open to you. And with that clarity comes an unsettling awareness. The real threats you were trained to stop are almost irrelevant. The true danger is in knowing too much, in understanding too clearly, in holding the levers that no one else even knows exist. Have you ever realized that knowledge can feel heavier than fear? That understanding how everything works, how every system interacts, and how every small choice can ripple outward to reshape perception is a weight that never lifts? At this level, you don't just respond to attacks. You anticipate influence. You predict outcomes. You see how a single unmonitored signal could become a movement, how a seemingly trivial piece of information could cascade into massive change. And the most terrifying part is this. You are in a position to decide what exists, what spreads, what remains hidden, and what disappears. That power is intoxicating, but it is also isolating, because no one outside this world can comprehend the scale, the subtlety, or the consequences. You try to step back at first, to disconnect, to remind yourself of a simpler life, of a world that felt normal before you saw the machinery behind it, but it is impossible. Once you know how reality is curated, filtered, and maintained, you cannot return to ignorance. Conversations you once had, headlines you once read, news you once trusted, all of it now carries patterns you see too clearly. Every interaction, every trend, every system you used to take for granted is part of the architecture you now understand. And the people outside this system, oblivious to it, move through their lives unaware that the truths they cling to are subtly shaped by choices made in rooms like this. By this stage, the psychological cost becomes apparent. You are no longer just a custodian of digital systems. You are a custodian of perception itself. You start to question what is real and what is curated. You understand that some information is removed not because it is dangerous, but because its presence could disrupt carefully maintained structures. The realization sits heavily. The system you protect isn't just about cybersecurity, it's about shaping reality so that the world behaves in ways that the system's architects consider stable, safe, or manageable. And yet, despite the weight, despite the isolation, despite the moral ambiguity, you stay. You cannot leave, not because they won't let you, but because you cannot return to not knowing. To walk away would be to abandon the clarity you've earned and the power you've acquired, but also the responsibility that comes with it. You see the patterns, you understand the flows, you recognize the potential chaos that would arise if this knowledge were lost, and you realize that your role is eternal, in a sense, a silent guardian of the unseen, a protector of digital secrets, and, ultimately, the unseen levers of reality itself. You are at the final rank. You know too much to be free. You know too much to ever trust appearances again. And every day, every decision, every signal you allow or block is a choice not just about information, but about the very reality everyone else takes for granted. You are no longer just part of a cybersecurity agency. You are part of the hidden architecture that shapes the world itself. And with that knowledge comes the ultimate, unshakable truth. You cannot leave. You cannot unsee. You cannot undo. Comment below. Would you choose the truth or a peaceful lie?